Good evening all, and welcome to this evening's full council meeting. I am Councillor Maureen Cregan, Mayor of Warrington, and I will be chairing the meeting. Before I start my initial comments, could you all mute your microphones or phones until you are asked to speak? In order to mute yourself, please press 6. When you are invited to speak, please unmute by pressing 6 again and turn your cameras on. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council has taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to self-isolation and social distancing, whilst fulfilling our duties as Council. The meeting is being broadcast live to the public in line with the requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020, Section 78. I will now call each councillor's name alphabetically to determine if they are present, and I will state if they have sent apologies. Thank you. Councillor Abbey. Councillor Abbey. No. Councillor Axel, his apologies. Councillor Barr. Where is everybody? Councillor Biggin. Councillor Bowden.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, I'm present, Madam Mayor. Mike Biggin.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Buckley.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Carey. Councillor Cooksey.
Present.
Councillor Davidson.
Present.
Councillor Deera. Councillor Fellows. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
Present.
Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Frodgley.
Present.
Councillor Friend. G Friend.
Present.
G Friend.
Present.
Councillor Froggatt.
Present.
Councillor Grime.
Present.
Councillor Guthrie.
Present.
Councillor Hall.
Present.
Councillor Hannon. Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hart. Councillor Higgins.
Present.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Present.
Councillor Keane.
Present.
Councillor Kerr-Brown.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Knowles.
Present.
Councillor Krasniak. Councillor Marks.
Present.
Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McLaughlin.
Present.
Councillor Mitchell.
Present.
Councillor Morris.
Present.
Councillor Mundry.
Present.
Thank you, Hans. Councillor Karen Mundry.
Present.
Councillor Parish.
Present.
Councillor Patel.
Present.
Councillor Price. Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Tarr. Councillor Walker.
Present.
Councillor Warburton.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Wellborn.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Wheeler.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Pat Wright. And Councillor Steve Wright.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, it's Mike Hannon. Did you catch my name then?
I didn't, but thank you for that, Councillor Hannon.
Madam Councillor Abbey as well.
Councillor
Councillor Abbey
Carter,
as
you
well.
didn't shout my name out.
Did I not? Sorry, Councillor Carter.
I'm here.
We've got you.
Madam Mayor, Peter Carey, I wasn't here at the very start, but I'm here now.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Carey.
And Madam Mayor,
No,
Councillor
Councillor Abbey.
here as well. I think I may have been missed.
Who's that? Sorry.
Councillor Bate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bate, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Bate.
Councillor Abbey and Councillor McCarthy are both here as well, I think, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I've got them. Thank you very much. Right. Members, before we move to the business of the meeting, please could we observe a minute's silence for Mrs. Margaret Isherwood, Honorary Freeman, who sadly passed away aged 102, and to remember Sarah Everard and all girls and women who have suffered harassment on the streets and elsewhere. Please remain seated during the silence. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, everyone who is listening for that. Members, before we start the main business of the meeting, we will be having a short presentation from the Children in Care Council, who are being supported this evening by Sharon Cooper. At the end, there will be an opportunity for questions. Welcome to you all. Do you wish to start your presentation?
Yes, please.
Please do carry on.
Thank you. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name's Sharon Cooper. I'm the Head of Service for Children in Care and Care Leavers in Warrington. I'm joined today by my colleague Alex Woods, who's the Principal Social Worker in Children's Services also. This meeting's being observed by Beth, who is one of our Children in Care and a Care Leaver. She's contributed to today's presentation. So the presentation is entitled Corporate Parenting, Would This Be Good Enough for My Child? Just to set the scene, as I'm sure you're aware, that children in care are often disadvantaged by the fact that they've been in care. There's some facts and figures on the screen about, unfortunately, how some children are disadvantaged and how often they leave the care system not having the same opportunities and aspirations of the peers who attend school and live within families within our local community. So nearly 1 in 4 care leavers aged 16 to 18 has a statement of special educational needs. 27% of care leavers aged 16 to 18 have 5 GCSEs in maths. 31% of children leaving care, however, have no qualifications at all. And 39% of care leavers aged 19 to 21 are not in education, training or employment. That compares to 12% of the national population. 14% of young women leave care who are pregnant or already a mother. And 12% of all care leavers were aged 19 were parents. Sadly, 25% of adult prisoners are care experienced, and 1/3 of care leavers become homeless within the first 2 years of leaving care. As such, corporate parents, we all have a responsibility to promote recovery, resilience and well-being to ensure our children have the best outcomes that we would want for our own children.
As a local authority, we occupy the role of corporate parents, which invites us to think about what we're offering for our children who've often grown up in situations of adversity. In children's services, we ask ourselves the question when we make decisions about the lives of these children about would this be good enough for my child? And where things aren't right, what can we do to put this right?
So the Children and Social Work Act of 2017 introduced 7 corporate parenting principles. I'm not going to talk through all of those today, but 3 of these are to help those children and young people gain access to and make the best use of services provided by the local authority and its partners, to promote high aspirations and seek to assure the best outcomes for those children and young people, and to prepare those children and young people for adulthood and independent living. As a local authority children's services, corporate parenting forms a key part of any Ofsted inspection framework. I'm just going to show now a short video involving one of our care leavers, Beth. Oh, sorry.
Say the words she's saying.
Sharon, there's no sound on
No
this.
sound.
Apologies, I did switch the sound on. I'll have to come out of the presentation just to switch it on. Will you just bear with me a second?
Of course.
Thank you. Hopefully it will work this time. Please let me know if it doesn't. Oh, hold on a second. Can people still see my screen?
Yes.
Yep, you can see that.
All I'm seeing is Sharon Cooper in text.
People see that?
Yeah.
No. We're not seeing what we should be seeing.
No.
No.
Okay, just hold on a second. Sorry, I have tried this out about 5 times today.
When I was plotting that, I didn't get.
Just bear with me. I'll try one more time, and if it doesn't work,
Give her another go.
yeah. Okay, can people see?
We can see as corporate parent. I'm not sure
Yes.
it's the start of the
We've-
video.
That's all we can see.
Okay, let me try the video now.
That looks right.
Okay,
All we need to
hooray.
sound.
Let's hope the sound comes on.
That's it.
Go.
When I was in foster care, I didn't get as many opportunities as I would have liked. However, I do know people that are in foster care that have got the opportunities, and it's working great for them. They have managed to get a job, their finances are really good, they're getting somewhere, they've got their own place now, and that's through my old foster parents helping them. Something I think is very important is giving children a fair chance no matter what their background is. I think we need to start extending opportunities beyond what you legally have to do. So beyond the age of 18, when you no longer legally have to do anything for the child in question, I think we should still be giving them the opportunities that they need, as not all children get that when they are in foster care. I think you guys should start taking advantage of where you work. Say if you work in construction and you have a foster child that wants to go into construction, speaking to them, speaking to your bosses, seeing if they can come to work with you and get that work experience and that opportunity to be able to develop it further. How are you guys going to be able to help this? What can we put in place to make sure that foster children do get the same opportunities that biological children would get? So we want to know how you guys are going to put that in place. We want our foster children and the children that are in the Warrington Borough Council to have the same opportunities as any other child, because they deserve that.
Just like to thank Beth for her contribution to the presentation. So how can we all play a role in being a corporate parent? Alex is going to ask some questions.
So we want to think about, as a local authority, what can we do to ensure that our children in care don't become marginalised or face disadvantage because of their experiences. And like with our own children, this extends beyond the age of 18. So questions that we're asking ourselves around: do we ensure that our children in care or care leavers are made part of our corporate family? Is their voice being heard? Are we hearing about their experiences and how we can make changes for them? And what can we learn from their experiences? Perhaps when things haven't gone so well, or when we've had a success, are we learning from that so we can replicate it? Do all our council departments work together to consider the needs of our children? So this might be travel passes, access to leisure services, financial support where there are health needs. How do we support them to access job opportunities? Many of our children won't have the links and connections that perhaps children who grow up within their birth families may have to access opportunities. Do we prioritise our children in care and care leavers and consider them in our local strategic needs analysis, local service development and development plans? And how do we ensure our local offer for care leavers meets their needs? And have we sufficient resources to meet the needs of our children in care and care leavers? As well as council tax exemption, could we pay for their TV licence perhaps, or house removal costs? These might be things that are offered for children who live within their family unit, and some of the support that, if we think about the children in our own families, that we may offer them beyond the age of 18.
So what can you all do as individuals to promote our children? What could you do as an elected member? For example, could you agree that you'll be a champion for children in care and care leavers in the area of your responsibility? Consider discounted services across Warrington and how you could be able to promote work experience and apprenticeships within the borough. If there is a youth service or foster carers in your ward, what are you doing to support them? Could you mentor a young person through using your own personal and professional contacts? Could you be a grand mentor? Would you be willing to deliver workshops to our children in care around cooking, budgeting, independent living skills? And what could you contribute to our annual Care Leavers event? How can we, as corporate parents, congratulate our children when they do well? So what I'd like you all to do really is to think about outside the box about how we can support our children and make sure that they don't face a level of adversity that was mentioned in the first slide. I'd like you to all just think about any pledges that you could give to children in care and care leavers, and I'm quite happy for those to be sent directly to myself.
Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Do we have any questions, councillors, please?
Alex is going to ask some questions.
Yeah, Councillor Mike Biggin, I've got a question.
As a local authority, what can we do to ensure that our children in care?
Sorry, I think that was very low.
Madam Mayor, can we speak?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Okay. It's Councillor Mike Biggin. I wonder if Sharon could contact me directly, please, to have a conversation about the children in care in my ward at some point.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mike Biggin, Grappenhall. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Sharon and Alex for their contributions, and particularly Beth for her contributions this evening. I really welcome, obviously, all their input in terms of corporate parenting, and would echo everything, all the sentiments they said about members getting involved. And obviously, it's easy as corporate parents to think about the big picture sort of things that we do on committees and putting things in place within the council. But I'd really emphasise what Sharon talked about with the pledges and individuals thinking about what they can do to contribute. I reflected on this earlier in the year, and as a teacher, my children obviously benefit because I can help them with homework and do all those sorts of things and contribute towards their education. So I contacted the virtual head teacher and offered to tutor anyone who needed help with science, GCSEs or A-levels. And that was my pledge and my contribution towards it. I know there's other members have all sorts of skills and jobs and, you know, abilities that they could contribute towards this. So I'd welcome everyone getting involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor King, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Sharon. I would really like to be a super mentor. I do work in business and have done for quite a few years. I've also become part of what we call a 1 Million Mentors, which is a national programme, which particularly for people in industry relating to people and younger people trying to get them into industry or into a career choice of their own. And you do 1 hour a month of mentoring. So I'd like to, if our council isn't already assigned to that, I'd like to, obviously, Matt, you and I can talk about that, but it'd be nice to sign up to that 1 Million Mentors. Please, if you want to look it up online, anybody that's on this call, please do so. And please, yeah, put my name down, and maybe we should all consider mentoring anyone that needs it in our wards. Thank you very much. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor King. Councillor Barr, would you like to speak?
I would, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm interested in all of our looked after children, but in particular those who are aspiring to go on to further or higher education. One of the things that's concerned me is that I'm not sure that they get support to the end of their full-time period of full-time education, and I think that that would be very helpful. Any other child does get looked after by their family until they finish their full-time education, whereas because so many of our looked after children drop out of the system at a younger age, they may not do. Also, I'd be very happy to mentor anybody who's thinking of applying for higher education or just considering whether it's the right thing for them to do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barr. Thank you so much for your presentation and attending this evening. I'm sure our paths will cross again during the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Can we go to item 1, apologies, please, councillors? Apologies received from Councillor Axel, Councillor Morgan and Councillor Jennings. Is there any, we have any others to note? No? Thank you. And can I do now the minutes of the council, item 2. I will move that the minutes of the council meetings held on Monday the 1st of March 2021, subject to the inclusion of Councillor Tony McCarthy to the attendance list. Does any member have any other matter of accuracy they wish to raise? Please indicate now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Fine, thank you. Pleasure. Can the Deputy Mayor please second?
I'm more than happy to second the minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. I will take that as all members are voting in support of the minutes. Is that correct? Good. Correspondence from the previous meeting, item 3. There's no previous correspondence this time. No. Item 4, the Code of Conduct Declarations of Interest relevant authorities, Disclosable Pecuniary Interest Regulations 2012. Previously, we have had the following declarations made in relation to the pay policy statement. Councillors P. Carey, J. Davidson, Councillor Friend, D. Friend, G. Friend, H. Mundry, K. Mundry, P. Warburton and T. Williams, due to the family members being employed by the council. I will also be declaring an interest as in this item as my daughter is employed by the council.
Madam Mayor, can I declare an interest as well? Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Johnson.
Madam Mayor, can I just say as Councillor Mundry, I no longer need to make that declaration of interest because of some sad family bereavement.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Councillor Mundry. Is that both for you and Karen?
Yes.
Sorry to hear that. Have we any more? No, thank you. Number 8, questions received from members of the public. As detailed in the letter sent to you, we will be taking 3 questions received by a member of the public first. The questions will be taken as read. Question 1, welcome Mr. McFarlane. Could we hear from you, please? As read. Or is the question as read? I do apologise for that. Councillor Bowden, please respond.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, members will see the question is quite lengthy and contains a number of questions, so I propose to provide a written response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowden. Mr. McFarlane, may you leave the meeting or continue to watch via the live stream on the council website. Thank you. Question 2. Welcome, Mr. Speed. Can Councillor Mundry please respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for raising this question with us. I have been contacting officers, and they are still working with some of the residents. So at this present time, they haven't sent out thanks to all the people who've been involved in helping out in this situation. But why this is the first major public meeting since the flooding in the area, I can take this opportunity to thank everybody, all the volunteer organisations, all the council officers, council employees, I think Taurus was provided vans for moving things around, family and friends, and neighbours helping neighbours. It really was a massive effort, and a lot of people volunteered their time to try and make sure that people were seen to as much as they possibly can. I have been told that some residents are still being supported by the council and other volunteer organisations at this time. But I'm thanking this opportunity to say a big thank you publicly for everyone who's been involved in supporting residents at their time of need. I think it's a timely reminder is that we're still open to, we're still open to Mother Nature and what it can do to people.
Yes. Thank you. Do you
Thank
have
you,
a
Madam Mayor.
supplementary question, Ms. Speed? No? Thank you. Councillor Bowden, have you any more to say? Sorry, Councillor Mundry. Sorry.
Sorry, I think we've done. We've sort of said we can say we can say this minute in time.
Sorry about that. So we go to question 3. Yes. Welcome, Mr. Golan. Can Councillor Mundry please respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a bit of a complicated response, I think, because the Transport Plan 4 is already been agreed. Is agreed in 2019, and we're already working towards that. I think the short answer would be that we're not expecting any major changes, but whatever route the government chooses, because the route through Warrington is going to be the government call a touching point in the centre of Warrington. Whichever route they choose will not affect the transport plan greatly, and the basic reason that is, they say the touching point will be in centre of Warrington, and that means the people will be travelling to and from that central point, which will not affect our transport plan greatly. So there's no major issues there with that one. As they actually route, the rail track goes all the way through, and there'll be only one touching point. Anywhere on the track won't affect our transport plan, because we only need to make sure people can get access to and from the central touching point. So there's no difference to that whatsoever. I think with the local plan, and I think that's going to be very similar to that again, because the rail track will be going through with no other touching points other than the central Warrington. It's not greatly going to affect the local plan either. And I think I'll explain about that a little bit more now, because when we do, like we did the new bridge in Latchford that the council built, and we opened Slutchers Lane, in that sense we opened up the opportunity for build homes for people and create opportunities for work and jobs. With the rail track going straight through with only one stopping point within the centre of Warrington, that's not going to be the same. Not going to have the same effect as the road that we've built and the roads that we are building. So it won't affect the local plan greatly at all. So the short answer is the government's going to announce its decision. It says in the spring. I don't know what spring the summer has. The government has, but they decide it's going to be. So they'll announce which route they're going to take. Whichever route they choose isn't going to affect greatly the transport plan, which is already agreed in 2019, and we're doing a lot of work since 2019 to implement a lot of our plans there, but particularly in the active travel, and it also won't greatly affect the local plan either. So there's going to be no great effects to that. whichever route the government choose to announce when they decide to announce it.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Mundry. Mr. Gowland, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yes, if I could add a supplementary to that. The local plan 4 obviously indicates that MPR would probably follow the line of the old Stockport to Warrington rail track. I appreciate your comments that it's just got the one stopping point, but quite a few of the sites potentially that could be open for development in Warrington South fall very close to that route. You obviously, is that still the likely route that we're looking at, considering that's what's in Transport Plan 4?
Well, it's a government decision, it's not our decision, so we won't be looking at the routes. It will be the government who decide in which routes they're going to take. And no matter where the track goes, there will be no stopping points there. So it won't change the transport or the local plan there, because there won't be the opportunities to do anything along that route, because no one will be getting off the trains there or getting on there. There'll only be the one point, central point. I think the government call it a touching point, will be in the centre of Warrington. It won't be anywhere else. There'll be no more touching points anywhere else. So the chances to develop anything anywhere else off the rail track itself is next to nil. It's only when you can put road structures in place that you create that opportunity.
Okay, so just for clarification, then, so far that those potential routes haven't been shared with Warrington. Is that a fair comment?
I think you're trying to get me to say something about the government's plans. I'm not allowed to say anything about the government's plans until they announce it. I can't announce the government routes.
I'm sorry, Councillor Mundry. We're short of time.
No, appreciate it.
Can you
Thanks very
sum
much.
up, please? And of course, Mr. Gowland, very quickly now, please.
No, that's great. Thanks very much. I understand that you've answered to the extent that you can, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Item 5, Civic Mayor's announcements. Just that I'm fast becoming a virtual mayor and we're doing everything from home. What I've been doing this last week and also doing again this week is just keeping in touch with our charities. I was with the hospital last week, and the amazing work that's going on in the Forget-Me-Not ward and around is just phenomenal under, very difficult circumstances. And then this week I will be speaking to Jump and also to Papyrus. So that's all I have to say at this moment in time. Thank you. Announcements from the leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take my announcements as read by members. Apologies for the slight delay. We had a technical hitch with these, so they couldn't come out until Friday lunchtime. I'd like to take the opportunity as well, Madam Mayor, to recognise that this is the last council meeting ahead of the local elections in May. And it won't have escaped anyone's notice that we'll be saying goodbye to a number of our colleagues after this meeting, many of whom have given many years, if not decades, of dedicated service to this council, to the residents of the communities that they've represented, and of course to the town in general. And of those people retiring, we've got a number of ex-mayors. I think it was 3 on the basis of those people retiring that I knew of. But also over the lifetime of this council, we've seen sadly some of our members pass away, including 2 former mayors in councillors Nelson and Woodyard. I think it's really important that collectively we recognise the contribution that our colleagues have made over those many years, and for their service and commitment to this town. And obviously we've all endured a very challenging last 12 months, which caused the delay in the election, but has also changed the way in which we would probably have marked the departure of some of our colleagues. So I'm really looking forward to post-election, regardless of what happens, and being able to mark their service and their retirement from the council in an appropriate way. So, what we have currently is a social event that's planned for July, hopefully post any kind of restrictions, and we can have a proper appreciation of their service. And obviously in June, excuse me, at full council we'll be considering the honour of bestowing honorary alderman status on some of our colleagues that meet the criteria for that. A strange situation to be in tonight, but I hope that we'll properly recognise the efforts and contributions that our colleagues have made in due course. I look forward to those events in June and July. So thank you to those people for their service. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Barr, would you like to say a few words?
I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to add my voice to Russ's thanks to the long-standing councillors. The council chamber will be very different without some of those. They have made a massive contribution over a very, very long period, decades in some cases, 2 or 3 or even 4 decades in some cases. And I think that we all owe them a great debt of gratitude. So I think that having a celebration of some sort once we're out of lockdown, I very much approve of, and thank Councillor Bowden for that. Pleased with many of the optimistic pronouncements as usual on the leaders list. All good stuff for Warrington, and carefully avoiding anything that I might ask a controversial question about, of course. However, you do refer to the arrangements for the coming elections, and I'd like to point out I think these elections are going to be very different, and I hope that they are going to be seamless, and I fear they aren't, because they're going to be driven by a whole load of armchair warriors on social media. Unfortunately, I had reason to report to the Chief Executive a few days ago defamatory material that was being put on social media that was defaming Labour councillors, that was defaming officers of the council, and which, in my view, requires legal action. About 10 years ago, an unwise red rose leaflet defamed me and defamed officers of the council. The Labour Party very quickly held up their hand, apologised, and left an apology on the North West Regional Labour Party website for 3 months. And that was the end of the matter. Much more difficult when these are armchair warriors. But also, whilst I'm not here to defend the administration, I think that given the problems of the administration in Liverpool, making completely unfounded accusations of corruption against both councillors and officers is totally unacceptable. So I'd like to ask the leader how he intends, or how the council is going to respond to those.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Barr, for your comment. I think my piece on elections was really around ensuring that there was no democratic deficit from the process, and I think professional elections officers, leaders of the council, returning officers were quite surprised that the government pressed ahead with elections in May, and I think we have to ensure that people are fully enfranchised with the process, and that people can vote safely, and that communities are able to elect strong councils in the weeks ahead. In terms of your comments, as someone who unfortunately has had to seek police input and legal advice over many of the comments that are thrown in my direction. And occasionally I'm grateful to Councillor Barr for taking some of the flak for me when he moves into the crosshairs of the very same keyboard warriors. Well, I think we're in a position where so many people see social media as an opportunity to say and do what they like without any fear of recrimination. I think whilst there's many positive aspects to social media, there are also some incredibly negative and damaging ones. I am aware of the defamatory material that Councillor Barr's referring to. That has been raised with senior officers, and we'll have to take advice on what the appropriate course of action is. I have always tried to uphold the best traditions and the highest standards in campaigning, and having differences of opinion is one thing. Shamelessly telling lies, spreading misinformation, deliberately libelling and slandering others is wholly unacceptable. And this goes way beyond now the actions of individual candidates representing political parties, but actually it's the contributions that are being made by people aligned with certain parties, with certain views, and the way they go about their business. And I'm watching things incredibly closely. I had to again threaten somebody with legal action only on Friday. This is not the way in which we encourage people in our town to put themselves forward for service to their communities. This is not the way in which we want to conduct business or conduct campaigning. And I think if that's to the detriment of the council post May, then that will be a very sad outcome, I think. I hope that colleagues from across this council will agree that there is no place for that kind of behaviour or those kind of actions in any kind of sensible debate about the major issues that face our town. And hopefully the majority of the people of Warrington will see through that, rise above it, and vote and get engaged with the election of their next council, without being unduly influenced by it. But I absolutely share his concerns. So thank you for that support, Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Pleasure. Thank you. Can we have Councillor Froggatt, please, who wishes to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to comment on behalf of all us retiring councillors, and I suppose that I've been serving for 42 years, both on the old district council, the old Cheshire County Council, and the new unitary council. So I can't have this as my last meeting without getting me 2 pence in. But first of all, I'd like to comment on the biggest achievement that Warrington gained during my 42 years, and that was to become a unitary council. I know the old district council, and Mike Hannon was one of these, who actually fought along with John Gartside, Mike Hall, and other great luminaries of the old Warrington District Council for a unitary council. And I'm afraid I was the lone voice on the Cheshire County Council fighting for a unitary. But anyhow, we got there in the end, and Warrington has gone on from success to success. And I'm very proud to have been a member of the unitary council. But there are 3 issues which they've been talking about since I first became a councillor, and they've not been resolved. The first issue, it was a national issue, and that's the greater integration of health and social care. And I remember sitting in meetings, first as a district council, then as a county councillor, and we still don't seem to have got any nearer. So that's an issue which I think is going to need national intervention. The other 2 issues are local. And one is a high level crossing over the Ship Canal, which we lost by 1 vote. I think it was about 1982 at Cheshire County Council. That looks to be on the horizon now. Probably the correct word, that horizon, for a high level bridge. But so I'm hoping that we'll get somewhere with that. And the third one, which we discussed ad infinitum on the district council and on the old county council, and that is a travellers transit site, which we all see the need of, but we have great difficulty in positioning it, and I'm sure the council will come up with an answer to that. So I'm hoping that when I leave in May, that either the national government will tackle the social and healthcare integration, and the new council will solve the other two problems as well. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Froggatt. Is that it? And may I extend my best wishes to you all on behalf of the town. Thank you for your service to Warrington. Thank you very much. And now we'll go to item 7, to receive the reports of the Cabinet and Council committees, please. Members, I'm going to take item 7.3 first, as it deals with a number of constitutional amendments, one of which is voting arrangements at council meetings. If approved, it may ease the situation this evening. Does anyone have any objection to this? No? Thank you. 7.3, proposed constitutional amendments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes?
I'm going to formally propose that the council adopts the recommendation of this report, but before we do so, I have an amendment to 14.1A. This deals with COVID regulations and remote meetings, which at the moment the regulations expire on the 6th of May. As you may know, Madam Mayor, today it has been announced that a legal challenge will be made on April the 21st to the government's decision not to extend remote meetings. That being the case, on the 21st of May, if the government prevails, then that's the end of the matter. If they don't prevail, it may well be an appeal process, so we may not have a final decision on this matter before the 6th of May. So I'm proposing that we an amendment to the end of that to read an additional sentence, or post 6th of May should the current situation change, which means that we can then do whatever the new regulations will allow. At the moment, we have to do, according to this statement that we've got before us, if we're stuck with May the 6th, and it would then require another meeting of the council to address issues if the government regulations do change. So I'll move that formally, and I'll call upon Councillor Froggatt to second the report and the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzsimmons.
Can I second the report, Madam Mayor, and the
You
subsequent amendment?
Thank you, Councillor Froggatt. Do any members wish to speak on the report? Please indicate. No. The Chief Executive will now take the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Abbey.
For.
Councillor Barr.
For.
Councillor Bate.
For.
Councillor Biggin.
For.
Councillor Bowden.
For.
Councillor Buckley.
For.
Councillor Carey.
For.
Councillor Carter. Councillor Cooksey.
For.
Councillor Cregan.
For.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Rea. Councillor Fellows. Fitzsimmons. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
For.
Councillor Flaherty.
For.
Councillor Fradgley.
For.
Councillor Diane Friend.
For.
Councillor Graham Friend.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Grime.
For.
Councillor Guthrie.
For.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hall. For.
Councillor Hannon.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Hart. Sorry, apologies. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Jennings. Apologies. Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Keane.
4.
Councillor Pierre Brown. Councillor King. Councillor Knowles.
4.
Councillor Krzyżaniak, apologies. Councillor Moore, apologies. Councillor Marks.
4.
Councillor McCarthy.
4.
Councillor McLaughlin.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Morgan. Apologies. Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Hans Mundry.
4.
Councillor Karen Mundry.
4.
Councillor Parish.
4.
Councillor Patel.
4.
Councillor Pennell.
Is Jean starting this?
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Tarr.
4.
Councillor Peter Walker.
4.
Councillor Warburton.
4.
Councillor Wellborn.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Williams. Apologies. Councillor Wright. Apologies. Councillor Steve Wright.
4.
Thank you, members.
Item.
That's carried.
It's carried, members.
Carried,
Thank you.
sorry, yes. I declare the report carried. Thank you. Item 7.1, the pay policy statement. Because I am declaring an interest, I'm now going to hand this over to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Flaherty. Thank you.
Councillor Flaherty is muted.
She's muted. Where is she? Councillor Flaherty.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you
I
now.
apologise for the things clicking on. Good evening. Can I please ask Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Bowden? Councillor Mitchell, can you propose the report, and Councillor Bowden, can you second it, please?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm proposing this pay policy report, and I don't intend to speak on it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm seconding this report, and I don't propose to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members wish to speak on the report? Can you please indicate now? Nobody wishing to speak? Thank you. In accordance with the previously agreed item, is it the will of the meeting that the recommendation is agreed? Do I have any objections or abstentions?
Councillor Graham Friends abstains.
Thank you.
Councillor
Johnson abstains.
Councillor Cregan abstains.
Councillor Carey abstains.
Okay.
Councillor Pat Wright abstains.
Okay. Any more abstentions? And the recommendation is agreed. Thank you. And I'll hand back to Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Item 7.2, climate change emergency.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for this. Can I propose that we receive this report to the council tonight and really just look at the successes that we've had in terms of our Climate Change Commission. This report looks at all the progress that we've made on the Commission and that just all the work that it's carried out in the past year, and it's been quite successful. It's produced its 1-year plan with many themes. Can I also just thank David Ellis, who's our independent chair, and also Lewis Groke, who's our youth ambassador and our vice chair on this committee, and they've done a really good job in terms of where we've got to at the moment. And just a matter of interest, but this week we've had the theme of the World Environment Day has been ecosystem restoration, and if you look at our York solar farm, it's just doing this. They've worked with universities and they've worked with specialists to provide the right underplanting, so it's been protecting the ecosystems around this area. It's great news for education because the underplanting actually is wildflowers, and it's able to sustain wildlife as well. So it's a great news for education for the area and a great news for the environment. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for that.
That's a pleasure, Councillor Guthrie. Councillor Bowden, can you second it, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to second this report. Just wanted to bring out a couple of comments because I think I join Councillor Guthrie in thanking the members of the Commission, particularly Councillor David Ellis for his leadership of that. I think this report shows real action and progress that we've made on this particular agenda, and you know the point I'd really emphasise is that we just don't simply just talk about things, but we actually get on and deliver against our commitments, and you know, climate emergency is a great demonstration of that. Hopefully what members will see is that it's very much a multifaceted approach, you know, looking at all areas that are affected by the climate emergency, and I was really pleased to see even single-use plastic strategy coming forward in that. Clearly we've made a lot of progress, and there's some real highlights there, particularly around solar farms, you know, and Warrington being the first council in the country that generates and supplies itself with 100% green energy. I think that's, you know, a real landmark achievement for Warrington. And also the real story about Together Energy. Councillor Barr mentioned in his question to me about some of the nonsense that's peddled around the town on social media, and I think Together Energy is a great example of that, and the transition and journey that they've been on into being a profitable organisation and obviously making significant contribution to the financial returns for the council. That's really important. I suppose the disappointing note to end on is really questioning where our government is going with the climate emergency, and the report obviously in section 711 talks about Green Homes Grant, and you know a scheme that was launched to much fanfare but has actually delivered very little and is indeed now being scrapped. It's okay, local councils and communities coming together to really show leadership around the climate change agenda. What we actually need is a government that's prepared to back it as well and to provide the resources and support that people need to make you know, their own contributions to that. And housing and, you know, poor insulation is a really significant contributor to climate change. And, you know, we really do need the government to step up to the mark, stop talking about things, but actually help communities deliver. So on that basis, Madam Mayor, I'm really pleased to second this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Do any members wish to speak?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Please do.
Thank you very much indeed. I welcome the report and I welcome the work of the Commission, and I absolutely support Councillor Bowden's criticism of the government's approach to this. In the coalition years when the Liberal Democrats were part of the government, there was a genuine green investment bank, our offshore wind industry took off, we were doing an enormous amount with eco-funding from the energy companies for energy poor households. The moment the Tories came to run the government by themselves, the first thing they did was scrap all what David Cameron called this green crap. Not only did they scrap the green crap, they scrapped all the jobs and they scrapped all the companies that were there to deliver it. And surprise, surprise, now they found they've got to rebuild it. They found they can't do it. And they can't do it, firstly, because they don't appear to know how, but secondly, because half their party appears to be against it, so they can't support it, including our own MP, who was, I would say, somewhat rude and dismissive about the council and his own parish council's support for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. And he said, don't even bother writing to me, because I'll give you 21 reasons for why I'm not going to support it. There weren't 21 reasons. There was one reason: the whip told him not to support it, so he didn't support it. I do have a slight misgiving and a regret. I regret that Judith Guthrie ran the Climate Commission and ran the whole of this programme as a single party programme, when this is something that affects future generations and future councils. When we were dealing with long-term issues like the ownership of the housing in Warrington and turning Golden Gates into a trust to unlock money for housing, we invited and we collaborated fully with the Labour opposition at that time. The Liberal Democrat opposition has been left completely out of this green agenda, and I think that's quite wrong. Regardless of what the makeup of the party is next, of the council is next time, if you're in charge, invite us. If we're in charge, we'll invite you, because this is something that everybody in the town should be committed to. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Any other members wish to speak? No. Thank you very much. Is it the will of the meeting that the recommendation is agreed? Do I have any objections or abstentions, please? All right. The recommendation is agreed. Right. 7.4, new code of conduct for members. Councillor Fitzsimmons, can you propose the report? And Councillor Froggatt, can you second it, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the new national code, which clarifies the conduct expected of all elected members, and which has largely been based upon the input from Warrington Borough Council Standards Committee. All newly elected members will be required to sign up to the code on taking office next May. I therefore now formally move the report for adoption by the council.
Thank you.
And can I second that, Madam Mayor?
You can, Councillor Froggatt. Do any members wish to speak to the report? Councillor Barr? Yeah, yeah. Is it? I'm sorry, is there someone who wishes to speak to this?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Right, I think we need to be very careful before adopting this new code of conduct, and we must ensure that we all want to abide by it. Imagine a hypothetical, or perhaps not so hypothetical, situation where a senior councillor is approached by friends, former political colleagues in his or her ward with a request to intervene in a change of conditions planning application. Imagine this council being informed by the development manager this was a matter that, according to the council constitution, should not go to committee, a view supported by 2 legal officers of the council. Imagine such a councillor feeling so strongly about the application that they put pressure on the development manager, the chief executive, and demanded, against the advice of the legal officers, to take the application to committee. Imagine that they then put pressure on the chair of the Development Management Committee to have the matter heard by the committee, and then gave evidence at the committee without disclosing their relationship with the objectors as an interest. What if this intervention led to the committee making a decision that was later overturned by a planning inspector at appeal, and was then referred to the local government ombudsman? Then, when the ombudsman declined to intervene, but the council was pursued with freedom of information requests for the council's emails, those requests were held up for over a year and needed the intervention of the Information Commissioner to release the correspondence which corroborated the planning applicant's story. How many elements of the code of conduct might this council have broken? Would they have acted lawfully if advised that what they wanted to do was not lawful? Would they have improperly sought to disadvantage the planning applicant? Would they have failed to disclose a conflict of interest? Would they have treated fellow councillors and members of the public with respect? And would they have tried to influence the impartiality of officers of the council? Or would their breach of the code of conduct be justified because they were doing their best for their constituents and attempting to prevent an application that they deemed to be planning by stealth? If we adopt this code of conduct, we must do so with every intention of abiding by it or facing the consequences, not picking and choosing when it's convenient. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr.
Would you like me to answer that?
Does anyone else wish to speak? No?
Do you want me to answer Councillor Barr's comments, Madam Mayor?
Oh, if you wish, Councillor, yes, Councillor Fitzsimmons, if you would like to refer to it.
The subcommittee was unanimous, an all-party subcommittee was unanimous in the recommendation of adopting this report. That's one thing. The other thing, the issues that Councillor Barr raises would be addressed as a form of defence. If any councillor were to do what he said, then they would be appearing before the Standards Committee to explain their conduct. And that would be their defence, why they did what they did. And that the Standards Committee may or may not agree with them. But it's not a carte blanche. You're not going to be tied as an automaton. You're required to abide by and understand the code of conduct. And if you breach it, you have a defence or not. So take that. I put that to Councillor Barr. He doesn't the code doesn't silence anybody.
No, absolutely. It's just that I think that there are issues of conduct which we've had under the previous code that haven't always been abided by. And I welcome this code of conduct. My group welcomes this code of conduct. And I think that all newly elected councillors are going to have to stand by this code of conduct. And you're quite right. They will be able to defend themselves if they feel that they have to act outside it. But it is a very restrictive code.
Thank you very much. The Chief Executive will now take the vote.
Thank you, members. Councillor Abbey, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Barr.
For.
Councillor Bate. For. Councillor Biggin. For. Councillor Bowden.
For.
Councillor Buckley.
For.
Councillor Carey.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Cooksey.
For.
Councillor Cregan.
For.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Durea. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
For.
Councillor Flaherty.
For.
Councillor Fradgley.
For.
Councillor Diane Friend.
For.
Councillor Graham Friend.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Grime.
For.
Councillor Guthrie.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hannon.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Kerr-Brown.
For.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Knowles.
For.
Councillor Marks.
For.
Councillor McCarthy.
For.
Councillor McLaughlin.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Hans Mundry.
For.
Councillor Karen Mundry.
For.
Councillor Parish.
For.
Councillor Patel.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tarr.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Warburton.
For.
Councillor Wellborn.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Pat Wright.
For.
And Councillor Steve Wright.
For.
Thank you, members.
I declare the report carried. Thank you. Question 9. Questions received from members of the council. Questions have been received. There are 30 minutes allocated to answering the questions. Any questions that have not been answered within the time scale will receive a written response. All questions will be taken as read. Question 1 from Councillor Wheeler to Councillor McLaughlin. Can Councillor McLaughlin please respond?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Wheeler, for your question. Access to social housing and the associated waiting list is an issue not just in Warrington, but nationally. There are a range of reasons why individuals and families find themselves on the waiting list for social rented accommodation. And that includes wishing to live near a relative or wanting to move into more suitable accommodation, such as a bungalow. But it also includes people who may be in overcrowded accommodation. And of course, we want to address that as quickly as we can. Of course, this hasn't always been the case. I am told of times not so long ago when there was no waiting list for social housing in Warrington, but those days have long gone. People want the security that comes with social housing, and demand in the private sector, driven not least by what has been a buoyant economy here, has pushed prices up for people wanting to choose this option. And then we have policies such as Right to Buy, which although gave some people the option of buying their home, and they were very grateful for it, a lot of those homes have ended up in the hands of private landlords and have reduced stock. It's not true to say that almost all developers are negotiating down the proportion of affordable housing they provide on any given development. There are several examples where developers are providing affordable homes absolutely in line with planning policy, including, of course, the council's own housing company. However, it's true to say that viability issues in the town centre have put pressure on some housing schemes being able to be fully policy compliant to the 20% required level. In every instance, a developer's viability assessment that seeks to deliver fewer affordable homes than the council's planning policy states is challenged using externally appointed chartered surveyors. We then need to consider the term social housing and affordable housing. In terms of housing association homes, there's not a lot of difference in cost to tenant. However, there are currently no longer government subsidies for housing associations building homes at social rent. The government does offer subsidies for those building at affordable rent. It's important that as a council we attract good quality house builders to Warrington to deliver the right product in the right place and at the right tenure to meet demand. And it's important that every Warrington resident can afford to live in a home that meets their needs. The council is working with housing associations in Warrington to explore how more homes for social affordable rent can be provided in a challenging climate to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to settle in a home they can afford. And we're leading on this with our own housing company, and I was really pleased to visit the site of one of our housing company's developments recently, and very pleased to see the progress on what are going to be really good quality homes, including quality homes for affordable rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Wheeler, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin, for that update. And I appreciate all the problems connected with social housing or affordable housing, however you define it. But I sit on the Development Management Committee, and time after time again, we are getting 20% affordable, no percent because of viability issues, 10% on the last big development at Centre Park. Can I ask you, do we need a more radical approach?
Councillor McLaughlin, please respond.
Yeah, Councillor Guthrie, I think this is a planning issue. If you're asking about development controls, I'm not the best person to answer a question on what is a planning matter. I think
it wasn't better, Councillor McLaughlin. It was, do you think we need a more radical approach in Warrington to solve the social affordable housing issue?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that you're talking about what's happening at development management, which is then planning. But I obviously support whatever we can do to get more affordable housing in the town.
Thank you. Question 2 from Councillor Buckley to Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Buckley for the question. The specific cost of the new council offices is not available as it was part of the total £73 million Phase 4 build contract with Vinci. That contract included the new council offices, the new market hall, the renovation of the Dolmans Lane units, a multiplex cinema and 7 restaurant units under the cinema, and a large public realm space. The new council offices brought with it significant savings on leases for new townhouse Quattro complex and the former customer contact office on Horse Market Street of over £900,000 per year. So essentially, it saves us money, it's better accommodation, and it's bringing council staff into the town centre, which helps to stimulate the local economy.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Buckley, do you have any a supplementary question?
Yes, basically the question hasn't actually been answered. I would have thought you would have a final cost because you should have the information to hand. You've given me quite a lot of figures and facts, so I would have thought you would have the information. Unless you can't give us the information, if there's a reason why not.
Councillor Mitchell, please respond.
Thank you for the supplementary question. I have already answered the question. This was part of a suite of different things that all came under one price, and I've already explained that. I think I've already answered that question.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Question 3 from Councillor Parish to Councillor Guthrie. Can Councillor Guthrie please respond?
Many thanks, Madam Mayor, for this question, and Councillor Parish as well. Withdrawing the local plan and starting again would cost at least £400,000. At least.
Who's going to respond?
£400,000. There would be the need to undertake at least 2 rounds of statutory consultation and starting again with the supporting technical evidence base. It's important to note that this would be over £400,000 less funding for those services protecting and supporting the most vulnerable in our town, or indeed caring for the environment. It should be noted that the starting the plan again would also mean that the council would not be able to meet the government requirement for all councils to have an up-to-date plan in place by 2023. This would mean that the council would be at risk of having the government take over responsibility for preparing Warrington's local plan. It also risks developers taking the opportunity, as a local plan would not exist. They could seize that opportunity for creating development sites they own and putting forward planning applications, both on brownfield sites and greenbelt sites alike. So be careful what you wish for, a structural local plan or unfettered access to all development land within the borough. The other part of the question, the reason that Fiddler's Ferry was not included as a potential housing site in the draft plan in 2019 was that the power station was still operational. I can vouch for that because I actually visited the power station. Now the power station is closed. Officers are reviewing the development potential of the site as a key element of work in taking the local plan forward. Thank you, Councillor Parish, for your question.
Councillor Parish, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I thought that was an underestimate, £400,000, but can I ask if it's Mr Carter's government that sets the housing targets, and they've been changed, I think 3 times in the last 4 years, and the government that sets the laws that developers exploit, and dare I say it, sometimes after sitting next to a minister at a fundraising dinner, and the courts often seem to have the final say. So I just wonder, why do some people think this process is easy?
I've no idea, Councillor Parish, why they think it's easy. It's a very convoluted process in preparing the local plan, because we have to involve everybody within the borough. You know, not not just sort of developers. We have to involve all the residents as well. And if you remember, we've already had over 4,000 representations from residents alone, of which we are replying to every single one. And it's just to ensure that we listen to everybody, that the local plan takes everything into consideration, and hopefully we get the right local plan for Warrington at the end of this process.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Question 4 from Councillor Barr to Councillors Mundry and Councillor Mitchell, please. Can Councillor Mundry / Mitchell please respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm taking this as a question on the footpaths and cycleways.
It is indeed.
Right, thanks for that. Thanks, Councillor Barr. It's just that on my paper, it's question 6. That just confused me a little bit. Right, so thank you very much for the question, and thanks for the I'm thinking about referring to the local transport plan 4, which obviously has the active travel in there. We have done a lot of work on the local plan 4 already, and I've asked officers to prepare an update on the achievements of the council to date. I'm sure the officer will be sending them out to all members so they can see how well we've been achieving to the local transport plan 4. And obviously the active travel is a major part about that, and the first and last mile. Obviously with the COVID situation, it's allowed us to accelerate our active travel plan even further and faster than we anticipated, which has been a good news story for us, particularly for cycling and walking and getting other ways of moving around the town, which I think people are benefiting from. I did take the opportunity, Councillor Barr, to look at a comparison of Warrington today, or just before COVID, and Warrington when you were running the town yourselves. Yes, I thought you know I'd do that, and I've
heard this old one.
Yes. Oh, you can hear it again then, Councillor.
Thank you.
I think it's good. Yeah, so we looked at
start numbering the jokes soon.
Yeah, okay, but we looked at the record you had yourselves when you were running the council compared to how we were just before the COVID, and obviously you already know the answer to this. That we are delivering far more with far less money before COVID on cycle paths than you were in your time. Bear in mind you had more funding available to you and delivered far less on this side of things. I took it a stage further and started looking at the major highway schemes in Warrington under your term of office compared to the last 5 years of the council. We've managed to deliver over £100 million with the major highway schemes, and when I looked at your own record, we couldn't find any. You actually delivered nothing, no major highway schemes in your term of office, which got me to thinking is that you talk a very good game, but you don't deliver on the pitch. I'm going to go back to your second part of your question about the increased claims of slips and falls. Obviously, there's far more cycle paths now than there ever was before, but we haven't actually got the data to there. There's no evidence to prove that there's been any increase to date, but the officer will be looking on this and report back as soon as he possibly can to find out where if there's any difference. We've gone back to 2016 and up to 2020. And we're looking at the information we have to date is we haven't got any signs of any increase in that. Councillor Mitchell may have some further information.
Thank you for that. There isn't any evidence at the moment that there's any difference, but obviously there's a 3-year limitation period on the personal injury claim, so we can't really say. It's probably a bit too early to say, but at this stage, looking at the records, there isn't any increase at the moment.
Councillor Barr, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. I'm grateful to Councillor Mundry and Councillor Mitchell. My experience of the past has been that they're a lot muddier, a lot slippier, but that's good because it's a result of far more active travel during the COVID period. But my supplementary is this. If we were to, or if the people of Warrington were foolish enough to elect a Conservative council, which says it would get rid of all our investments, therefore lose £20 million worth of funding, and it wouldn't raise council tax at all, and lose another £5 million of funding. Would Councillor Mundry like to tell me, or Councillor Mitchell, what the impact of taking £25 million out of the budget would be on our active travel and transport programmes?
Can I just go first, Kath, if you don't mind?
You can answer that, Hans.
I can just go first. You can come in if I get anything wrong with this one. Thank you, Councillor Barr, supplementary. Very interesting things about that is what I've done analysis on is the government are borrowing quite a lot of money at present to date, and quite rightly so, to actually keep the country going. The difference between the government borrowing and one of the councils borrowing is that the government will be expecting a taxpayer to pay it all back over a period of time. But where the councils borrow to invest, the investment is paying the money back and not the taxpayer. It's a massive difference. We're not expecting the taxpayer to pay the investment money back because the investments, as I said, serve the debt, so pay the debt back with no taxpayer money being involved in that. And they also have a surplus £25 million, which we use to serve the population of Warrington, to serve Warrington people. So councils have been forced into this sort of things. It's Warrington's just been successful, and we're not cost. All the actual debt is being paid for by the investments itself, and leaving a surplus of £25 million we can spend per year on the residents of Warrington. It's not like profit for the council. It's every penny goes back into serving the people of Warrington.
Thank you very much, councillors. And now we are out of time. We're moving on to the next question. We're just moving on to the next question, please. We're sorry, we're looking at time. We're concerned that it is, it's getting on. Question 5 from Councillor Warburton to Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Warburton, for your question on the public health grant. The public health grant allocation for Warrington was recently announced and was increased by just 1% for 2021 to 2022. However, this increased funding also comes with additional expectations that local authorities will pick up the funding of pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, which is a medication to prevent HIV transmission. In reality, this is a 0.67% increase. In fact, just 40p extra for every person in Warrington. And furthermore, we are also expected to include within the grant new responsibilities our test, track and trace and outbreak planning and any other public health spend related to COVID-19. So in reality, this is yet another cut to the public health grant and services at a time when it will be needed most. This is woefully inadequate and fails to recognise the crucial work the Council's public health team carries out on a daily basis, not only in terms of fighting the pandemic, but also in helping to address the many health risks that make people more susceptible to COVID. It's a slap in the face for people in Warrington and for our dedicated public health team. But don't just take my word for it. Here is what the Association of Directors of Public Health had to say about the recent settlement. The public health grant allocations are too little, too late. After years of cuts, and in the context of COVID-19, we are dismayed that this settlement does not reflect the immense pressures of local public health leadership and services. During 2021 to 2022, local public health will continue to play a key leadership role in the management of COVID-19, as well as addressing the underlying health inequalities that have been exposed and exacerbated by the virus. If we are serious about learning the lessons from COVID-19, then we should be investing substantially in local public health now. And that was what was said by the Association of Directors of Public Health. And I couldn't agree more. When is this Conservative government going to learn the lessons from this pandemic and start to really commit to public health? When is the Conservative government going to take on board the fact that local public health teams are best placed to lead on prevention work to address the very health inequalities which make people more susceptible to COVID? We have lots of warm words, but the truth is this settlement tells you all you need to know about the Conservative government's true commitment to public health.
Councillor Warburton, do you have a supplementary question?
I don't have a supplementary question, Madam Mayor, but I'd also like to echo the tribute to the public health team in Warrington and the vital role that they play. So thank you, and thank you to Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Okay. I'm awfully sorry, but question 6 from Councillor Harris. I'm awfully sorry, Councillor Jennings isn't here today, so I imagine he will respond to you in writing.
I can answer the question if you want, Madam Mayor.
Is that okay then, Councillor Bowden, if you'd like to go with that then?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Harris for the question. I mean, I think, as rightly stated, Warrington does indeed have some of the best broadband coverage in the country, and we've got something like 96% super fast, which has largely been achieved through the Connecting Cheshire partnership that was established back in 2017, and the 3 Cheshire local authorities plus Halton invested £7.25 million to improve speeds and accessibility by 2020. And this will increase further when City Fibre's £4 billion investment is introduced over the next 4 years, because it includes several Warrington wards, which is really good news. However, broadband infrastructure improvement is essentially a commercial decision for organisations such as BT Openreach, Vodafone, etc. And it's really dependent for them on a viable return on any investment that they make. So consequently, less populated rural areas often find themselves not as well connected as their urban neighbours. And as a council, we're committed to continuing our work with Connecting Cheshire and with the Cheshire and Warrington Local Enterprise Partnership to highlight exactly those communities that need better connectivity. And obviously that has more implications for our partners in Cheshire than Warrington, but obviously there are some parts of rural wards within Warrington itself. So this has included a formal response to the government's 2020 gigabit survey. We surveyed several rural areas, particularly in the south of the borough, and recommended them for the pilot programme. The Project Gigabit amounts to some £5 billion of project funding. That was launched this month, and it will provide vouchers to help private households achieve speeds of up to 1,000 megabits per second. The engineering is expected to commence in early 2022, although I would point out that Cheshire is not in the first cohort of locations under Project Gigabit. So until it reaches Warrington, I would certainly encourage local residents to speak with providers such as Openreach, to establish a community fibre partnership, and in that way to help bring together demand in their areas into a viable proposition for investment by those providers. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Harris, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you for the explanation, Councillor Bowden. It's not a luxury these days to have adequate internet access. It is a necessity, and I do feel that the rolling out of the new scheme is somewhat disingenuous, because, as you've rightly said, there are areas that are affected in Warrington are unable to access those schemes and may well be several years down the line before they can do. So I would ask again, would the council continue to lobby both the government and our MPs to make sure that our residents do have decent access? Thank you.
Thank you for that supplementary, Councillor Harris. I absolutely agree, and I think certainly what we've seen over the last 12 months and people needing to work from home, it's obvious that they need to be able to have good quality access and communications with their employers to be able to do their normal job. So I think that certainly brought it home to people. And I think just generally the way our society is, you know, people rely a lot on information and the ability to do stuff online, and so it is absolutely crucial. We'll continue to lobby. You know, we work with our partners in Cheshire and the LEP very closely around issues such as IT connectivity, and we'll continue to lobby government for infrastructure funding. And obviously try and work with our 2 MPs to make that happen. So yeah, I fully agree with the comments made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris and Councillor Councillor Bowden. Thank you. Question 7 from Councillor Davidson to Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Davidson, for your question on residents accessing financial support when they're asked to self-isolate. COVID-19, national and local contact tracing of individual cases and close contacts include an inquiry about practical and financial support needed to self-isolate. Warrington residents who identify a need for practical or emotional support are referred to the Council's Warrington Wellbeing Service or signposted to appropriate sources of help offered by the range of organisations offering support in our town. Those residents who do need to apply for financial support are signposted to the local authority, to the local authority website to access the online application process for the one-off self-isolation payment of £500 administered by Warrington Borough Council. However, the conditions for eligibility to receive the one-off isolation payment of £500, as set down by the government, are based upon applicants being in receipt of one of 7 qualifying benefits. In February this year, the difficulties which these criteria presented for applicants applying for self-isolation payments were detailed in a letter sent by the council leader and myself to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The letter highlighted the fact that since October 2020, the applications of 68.9% of Warrington residents had been unsuccessful due to their not receiving one of the qualifying benefits. Councillor Bowden and I pressed the Chancellor to review the criteria for access to the payment, putting forward the suggestion that the qualification for the payment should be contingent upon a case or close case being told by Test and Trace to self-isolate, and that the case or close contact has responded to Test and Trace's communications and requests for contact tracing information. Improving access to the self-isolation payment would, our letter emphasised, guarantee greater compliance to self-isolation and in turn decrease the chances of COVID-19 being spread throughout our communities. So let's put it another way. Warrington residents in need of payments to support them financially to allow them to self-isolate are rejected in nearly 70% of cases. That's not just an awful situation for those individuals, it's a public health threat and is likely to cause further transmission of the virus. How many of those cases are going to take seriously the need to self-isolate when it means they may not have enough funds to get through the week? How many are going to turn up to work and so risk spreading the virus even further? How many people are going to avoid taking a test at all because they can't afford to self-isolate? We need to make it easy for people to comply with these regulations, and I really hope for all our sakes that the Chancellor will take this issue seriously and get that funding support in place.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Davidson, do you have a supplementary question, please? No? No. And that is the end of the questions, please. We have no more time for them. And it will be in written responses from the local councillors. Thank you. Item 10. Oh, first of all, could I remind everyone to mute when you're not speaking, please? It is causing a few problems. Thank you. Can we now go to the motions? 6 motions have been received. Motion 1, the harassment against women. Yeah, Councillor Keane has decided. Yes, Councillor Keane will not take part. Oh, he wants
Yes,
to
thank you.
address. I do apologise, Councillor Keane. You wish to address.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was a bit slow getting off the mute button there. With respect to this motion, I'm in the odd position that I will be voting for the leader to write to me in my role as Police and Crime Commissioner on this particular motion. That does just bring to light that I feel that I should declare an interest, because that matter is there and would involve writing to me and me making a vote on that. However, I do, having made that declaration, I would still wish to take part in a vote on the matter, because I don't feel that the interest declares precludes me from doing that. So unless there's any advice to the contrary, Madam Mayor, I would like to declare the interest as stated, but I would like to take part in the vote on the matter.
Fine. I don't think there is a problem there. Yes, thank you, Councillor Keane. I think that will be fine. An alteration to the motion had been received, combining motion 1 and motion 4. And so there will now be only 5 motions in total. There will be 2 proposers for the motion and 2 seconders for the motion, and each will be given 2.5 minutes to speak to the motion. Councillor Harris and Councillor Hall, please propose.
I propose this motion to the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I propose this motion also to the council and reserve the right to speak.
And reserve the right to speak, yeah.
Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Knowles, please second.
I certainly wish to second this vote. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I second the motion and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Harris, can you speak on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, my thoughts are with Sarah Everard's family and friends whose lives have changed beyond recognition and whose future life experiences will always be set against her tragic circumstances of her death. Secondly, I would like to thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing the 1 minute silence. It is a measure of the fundamental importance of this motion that both the Liberal Democrat group and the Labour group have joined together to produce this motion. Harassment and violence against women is not new. It is something that women in all cultures have endured through time, and they have had to find ways to deal with it, from ignoring it, submitting to it, putting up with it, and fighting it. And there will not be many women who have not had experienced verbal, physical, or mental trauma at some point in their lives, and some of the women at this meeting tonight will count themselves in that number. When I was growing up, it was accepted that men had power over women both in systemic and cultural terms. They had the power to humiliate them, to make them question their own actions and ask, what did I do to provoke this unwanted attention? Throughout history, women have been terrified to walk the streets and lead their lives the way they want to, without being judged as sexual objects of gratification. It is high time that systemic stereotyping and lack of respect towards women stops and is challenged by us all. One of the main thrusts of this motion is about the education of both men and women, girls and boys. It is most definitely not about demonizing men and boys, who mostly do not want to be the problem, but want to be part of the answer. That answer begins in early childhood, teaching our young boys and girls about empathy, understanding and respect for all, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. I am encouraged to know that Warrington schools already address harassment through the PHSE curriculum. And by the end of primary school, children will have an understanding about internet safety and the effects that online bullying and abuse can have on mental health. By the end of secondary school, all pupils should know about respectful relationships and friendships. They should have an understanding of what constitutes sexual violence and abuse in its various forms and should understand why these behaviours are always unacceptable. However, the fact that these principles are built into the curriculum does not mean that behavioural change will happen without the whole of society taking some individual measure of responsibility. It is horrifying to learn in the press that there is now a rape culture within schools in this country. Therefore, we cannot afford to be complacent and leave the responsibility to others. If we want to see change, we must challenge and constantly reassess. The Everyone's Invited Instagram page has also highlighted the scale of the problem in schools and has given a voice to thousands of stories of misogyny, harassment, abuse and assault. This behaviour is simply unacceptable. To quote Soma Sara, when we direct the blame onto a person or a place, we are undermining the most important message. Rape culture is universal and everywhere. We should all take responsibility for a culture that is so widespread and work together to dismantle and eradicate it. Members, I commend this motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Hall, can you speak to the motion, please?
Not all men are violent, but all women feel the fear, anger and exasperation living in a world where violence and harassment against women and girls is considered part of being a woman. In the wake of Sarah Everard's tragic death, women from across the country have spoken out, sharing stories of abuse, harassment and assault. Many of us here this evening will have our own stories to share. The statistics speak for themselves. A YouGov poll for UN Women recently reported that 7 out of 10 women had experienced some form of sexual harassment in public, rising to 9 out of 10 for younger women. Over half of women had experienced catcalling, 4 out of 10 had been groped or faced unwelcome touching, a third had been followed, and 1 in 5 had faced indecent exposure. Another survey found that around half of women had faced sexual harassment at work. As a mother to a daughter, I know that I will have to have conversations with her about her personal safety, but I want something better for our daughters. It's time we started to address the cause of the problem and not just to keep having conversations about how we can stay safe. While many men want to do the right thing to make sure women feel safe, sadly, there are some who encourage and engage in abusive behaviour or fail to stand up to it. All men, including those who are not perpetrating violence or abuse, have a responsibility to play a part in helping to end it. I urge all men to listen to these experiences and to find out what you can do to help. Speak and listen to the women in your lives, recognise their experiences are only the tip of the iceberg, and ask how you can be a better ally to them. In putting forward this motion tonight, we are calling for actions that will make Warrington safer for everyone, men and women, young and old. From establishing a commission that works with local women and girls to ask what needs to happen to make sure they are safe, to ensuring public funding is made available to support the safety measures needed in our communities. From supporting initiatives to help men and women to understand and know how to challenge abusive behaviour, to working with businesses and partner organisations to help address harassment, intimidation and violence in our town. Together, we can drive real change to ensure that all women and girls in Warrington can go about their daily lives without fear or risk of violence or harassment. To every woman in Warrington who has experienced some form of harassment or violence, we stand beside you. We hear you, we support you, and it doesn't always have to be this way. We are committed to working with you to ensure you feel safe in Warrington. I urge members to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Wheeler, do you wish to speak?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I lost my mute. Sorry, I lost my mute button then. Can I ask Councillor Knowles to go before me, Madam Mayor?
Certainly, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Knowles, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues, Councillors Hall, Harris and Wheeler, for demonstrating such a collegial, common sense approach to this joint motion. I'm so pleased to see such consensus among my female colleagues, who I know share the view that this sad and worrying topic is above and beyond party politics. I'd like to focus on the first two bullet points of the motion. Firstly, the establishment of a commission in Warrington that not only listens to women, but also heeds what they have to say is critical to being able to come up with effective ways to support community safety. Robust action requires effective listening. Establishing a commission that both hears and heeds the views of women and girls is central to improving our lived experience. Secondly, investing public funding in supporting safety measures in the community needs to be done in an evidence-based, inclusive and informed way that fully takes into account the perspective of women and girls. We have a recent precedent in Warrington from the Central 6 Neighbourhood Plan of a public consultation that's been nominated for an award for the quality of its public engagement. It also looked at the local environment and community safety as a key element of its work, so we do know how to listen and how to produce an evidence-based plan of action. We also need to bear in mind the importance of intersectionality so that the views of women of colour, diverse ethnicity and faith, ability and disability, different age groups, economic status, sexual orientation and the thoughts and feelings of those who are trans, as well as people who are non-binary, are taken into account. Some women and girls may feel, or be, particularly unsafe due to the prejudices that exist in society, and I would hope that an affirmative and supportive approach to listening to their lived experiences will add a valuable dimension to the solutions that are generated. Lastly, investment. Our response to the tragic case of Sarah Everard and the issues it raises will be nothing more than hot air unless practical steps are enacted to enable women and girls to feel safer, and most importantly, actually to be safer. This is about educating boys and men. It's also about taking practical steps to ensure a well-lit environment that's adequately policed, buildings in a public realm that are designed with safety in mind, and a justice system that takes women's safety seriously and does not shift the blame onto women. If we think these things are important, we must find ways to fund vital improvements to safety and work with community partners to make them happen. I commend this motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Nails. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, I thank my fellow councillors, Sarah, Sharon and Rebecca, for their work on this motion. I don't think I can add anything more, Madam Mayor. I think it's been very eloquently expressed by my three predecessors. What I'm thinking as I'm listening to this, and we are possibly one of the first councillors to have this as a motion, just given the timing of this meeting tonight, that we going forward can look and plan and to be an exemplar town for reducing the risk of violence towards women. And maybe that's something we could progress throughout the political parties in Warrington. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Do any other members wish to speak on the matter? No? Councillor Harris, you have the right to reply if you have anything else to say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I've got nothing else to say except that it's lovely to have a cross-party motion like this.
And the same to you, Councillor Hall. Have you anything to say?
Yeah, no, same here, Madam Mayor. Just to echo Councillor Harris's comments as well, and thank you for the support.
Thank you. Is it the will of the meeting that the recommendation motion is agreed? Do I have any objections or abstentions, please? I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Motion 2, planning applications. Councillor Marks, please propose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I propose and obviously reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Marks. Councillor Bate?
Yes, I second the motion, reserve the right to speak, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mark, can you speak on the motion?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I put this motion to council because of a problem with a particular planning application, but I know I'm not the only one who has grave concerns about the 21-day rule. On the 20th of July last year, residents submitted an application for an extension to the side of his house. I looked at this when I was notified, but saw no problems. Neither did the parish council, and there were no neighbour objections, which is not surprising because it doesn't overlook any other property. In January of this year, 6 months later, I was contacted by the architect to say the planners were turning it down because, quote, the house appeared cramped on its plot, unquote. I went to look and had a socially distanced visit onto the site and a discussion with the owner. Now, I understand the site visit by the planner actually took place on the highway. Now, I'm not a professional planner, but as far as I was concerned, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the application to warrant refusal. There were trees partially shielding the extension from public view. And what was particularly galling for me was that the house was immediately opposite the Old Lim Hotel site, where gross cramping was allowed by the planners. Now, the owner and architect have now withdrawn the original application and submitted a completely identical application. I have no idea whether the application will receive the same recommendation for refusal or not. However, I've asked for it to go to DMC, and as my material reason for doing it, I've quoted a side extension on the house opposite, which has been approved, but which is more prominent, not less. And it's been accepted to go to DMC. This process I follow is a complete nonsense, and the episode is hardly service to the public, which the department claims to offer. It is utterly wrong that the delays and failures in the planning department should prevent the democratic right of a councillor or a parish council to call in an application. Now, I realise that sadly COVID is a contributory reason, and I'm obviously sorry for this. However, the needs of the customer should be the driving force, not departmental capacity issues and the inability to perform properly. And before just concluding, I'd like to take this opportunity to mention problems of a broader nature in the department, which need to be addressed perhaps at the same time. Late last night, Sunday evening, I had a very frustrated resident on the phone about a totally different planning application. And here is a quote from the email she sent me. I do quote, "Thank you in anticipation of any help or assistance you can provide during this extremely frustrating and irritating process caused by a pedantic and elongated process. Our architect, who has 40 years of experience, has never known such a protracted process for what is not a complex application. The lack of communication from the planning department throughout the process has frankly been woeful. Delays still ongoing and the outcome of the decision is still not known, 4 months and 18 days after the determination officially due." But back to the motion. The point I'm trying to make is more flexibility is needed in the operation of the 21-day rule. And I'm asking that changes be made to this rule and that the matter should be considered by the Constitution Subcommittee. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miles. Councillor Bay, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure that all councillors will agree that the public must have trust in the planning system. And the key element of gaining and maintaining trust is transparency and openness. Like Councillor Marks, and I'm sure many other members, I'm frequently contacted to offer support to residents, either as applicants or as objectors to a planning application. Sadly, in a number of recent cases, I've found that this contact has come too late. Now, whether the rule wasn't previously enforced as strictly or by some quirk it simply hadn't been a problem before, I only truly became aware of this issue last autumn when a resident asked for my help in objecting to a neighbour's planning application. The application was on the 8th or so revision of plans, and the 2-week consultation window on the most recent version of plans was open. So I contacted the planning department and asked for the application to be referred to committee, only to be told that the 21-day rule applied effective from the initial application, which had been some 6 months or so earlier. I was left unable to help on that occasion, and sadly this has happened again since. Now, planning is of course complex, and it is also deeply emotive and personal. Very often people are extending or defending their homes. When the letter drops on your doormat telling you about an application that can affect you, nowhere does it say to contact your ward councillor within 21 days. Nor does it immediately become necessary in all applications to contact your ward councillor. You might speak to your neighbour, you might air your concerns, and the plans might be changed to perhaps solve that problem, or plans may change to create the issue. Then, when you realise you need some help, you contact your councillor and discover it is too late. So people are left feeling frustrated and let down. Regardless of the efficiency of the planning department, not all applications are dealt with swiftly. And as I said, that's understandable because planning is complex. We cannot reduce that complexity, but we can improve the transparency. And so that is why we are asking the monitoring officer to bring forward proposals for a fairer, more flexible system. Consideration also needs to be made about communicating the rules to residents more clearly when they become involved in the planning process, either as an applicant or as a potential objector. This could be as simple as changing the wording or info which is given to affected residents. As I said, planning is personal and it is also somewhat permanent. So we must get the decision-making process right. We must improve transparency and by doing that, hopefully restore trust in the planning system. I hope that there is nothing contentious in anything that Councillor Marks or I have said, or indeed what is contained in our motion, and I commend the motion to you for your support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bate. Do any other members wish to speak on this matter? I have Councillor Grind. You've indicated you wish to speak. I've also got Councillor Guthrie and then Councillor Wheeler. So can we start with Councillor Grimes, please?
Can Councillor Guthrie speak first, please?
Of course, no problem. Councillor Guthrie, you wish to speak?
Yeah, many thanks, Madam Mayor, and many thanks for the proposals in the motion. I'm rather perplexed by this motion because it seems to be just a litany of people's planning applications, which I do agree sound very complex, but I'm even more confused now. Can I just start by saying that whoever wrote this motion needs to get their facts straight, as their own colleague recently brought this very question to our DMC committee, where it was decided to leave this till a new DMC was constituted after the elections, and where an informed and proper decision can be made. Councillors have the right to know about objections or comments until the 21-day period is over, like everyone else, including residents. They're all logged onto our planning site and can be viewed by anyone. Other councils in our area, such as St Helens, do not have any call-in periods at all, so they are very limited in what they can do. If the period were to be extended, then the council could be liable for non-determination with all the legal caveats that surround this. Members have plenty of opportunity to call in applications. This has nothing to do with our planning officers, who do a sterling job, I have to say, throughout this difficult process. I am very concerned about this motion, which asks the council to put in place something that is undemocratic and basically does not trust either our planning colleagues or their own colleagues on the DMC committee. I will be calling to reject this motion in its complete entirety. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Guthrie. Councillor Grime, would you like to go now?
Yes, thank you. First, can I reassure Councillor Bate and Councillor Marks, there is actually a system in place to deal with the problems you've experienced. As a ward councillor, you can ask the Director of Growth to call in the application after the 21 days in unusual and difficult circumstances. And I'm sorry that hadn't been communicated to you at any point. But overall, I am seriously concerned about this motion. I believe it's totally premature. It's unthought out, it's alarmingly woolly, and it could lead to an impossible situation for Warrington Borough Council, as Councillor Guthrie's just mentioned. It does appear to me that the proposer and seconder have not fully understood the implications of what they're asking. They've looked at one important but narrow part of the process, the very responsible role of the ward councillor. They've asked for this to be made flexible, but in a wholly indefinite way, as if we had unlimited time available. This is not the case. Once a mainstream application comes in, we have 8 weeks to produce a decision, 13 if it's major. Councillors have 21 days to make a call in, then it goes to the next DMC meeting. But there are 3 or 4 weeks between meetings. Add it up. There's not a lot of time left to play with. A vague reference to flexibility in this context is just out of order in something as serious as a council motion. Going over time on determining applications is not a matter we can afford to be relaxed about. We report our figures for time taken to central government. If we fall below the performance thresholds, we become what's called a designated authority. This means applications can just bypass us and go direct to government. We can try to avoid this by asking for an extension, but it is the applicant who has the choice about whether to agree to an extension or not. If it doesn't suit them, they don't agree. They can then appeal against the council for non-determination. The result of that is, again, someone else makes decisions about what will happen in Warrington. It is also a black mark against the council, and too many black marks can mean we lose control over our own planning altogether, and it does happen. The Planning Committee and Department have 2 major constraints. We have to work in accordance with the Constitution. We have to. This has the force of law. We also have to adhere to government policies. We have to. This has the force of law as well. Please, please don't put the new DMC in a position where it's actually impossible for them to do both. The system is already under a lot of pressure. We totally rely on you not to make call-ins that are not needed. Planning meetings, currently on a 3-week cycle, are often long. I worry about whether we could make the same quality of decisions if they get even longer. I'm very disappointed that this motion has been put forward without any reference to a part for DMC in the consultation. When the new DMC have got their feet under the table, then they can, if they wish, make a recommendation to the Constitutional Subcommittee for an absolutely clear, defined and workable system that will comply with the law. I ask you to reject this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grime. Could I go now to Councillor Wheeler, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason this motion has come before you is with the frustration we are feeling because of the problems in the planning system. I have an application in my ward which was submitted last October. There was no reason at the time to request it to come before DMC. I looked at it, but I wouldn't normally get involved in planning applications unless there was a reason to, either requested by the applicant or an objector, or I had strong concerns myself. Unfortunately, it's quite a tricky application, and the applicants came across lots of problems with the case officer, who was only doing her job. That's not a criticism of the case officer. I couldn't help because I had not objected in within that 21-day period. I had my hands completely tied by this rigid 21-day rule. This application has not yet been decided, and I am powerless to help the applicant. This is why this motion has come before you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Bowden, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep my contribution very short. I think I'm a bit stunned, to be honest, that the proposer of this motion thinks that a council motion is an appropriate vehicle for criticising council officers, who certainly have no right of reply to the comments that have been made. And in actual fact, the example given added no weight whatsoever to the motion that's been put forward. I'm also surprised that senior councillors think that they don't have sufficient power to raise concerns on planning matters outside of the 21 days. It's the route has been clearly set out by Councillors Guthrie and Councillor Grime, and the responsible director has the ability to call in application. If there are exceptional circumstances, or if the details change as time progresses, then that route is still open, and that's what politics is about. It's about persuading others, it's about putting that case and demonstrating that there is a clear need for it to go to DMC. I fail to see what any woolly change to extending the 21 days, potentially leaving it open and putting the council at risk from non-determination is going to achieve. It's just basically an excuse to keep on swinging the lead, to not determine applications and to continue playing to the public gallery. And I certainly won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, yes, thank you, Mayor. I was muted, sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've heard the explanations and the contributions, and I understand and accept what has been said. But I would point out that the recommendation isn't asking this council to make a decision. It's asking this council to refer the situation to the monitoring officer, who will, should it be passed, in due course come forward with a recommendation.
Is that it? Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Barr, please. Councillor Barr. Yes. No?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to say the same as Councillor Walker. This motion is about asking the monitoring officer to look at a procedural problem that has arisen because of the way that the Constitution is currently worded. Now, these are not anecdotal examples. These are a set of examples of situations where effectively councillors have felt disenfranchised to help their constituents. Now, if there is a lack of clarity, then it's absolutely appropriate for a monitoring officer to advise the Constitutional Committee as to what to deal with that, and that's what this motion is about. What I fear, and what I think councillors fear, is that we're jumping into bed with the Conservative proposal that councillors should have nothing to do with planning applications, that the public shouldn't be able to comment on planning applications, and once a plan's been made, then it should be entirely up to officers to determine planning applications with the applicants. Now, I think that is what is undemocratic. This motion is about retaining and giving some clarity to the democratic right of councillors to intervene on behalf of their residents within a very reasonable time. And at the moment, the worry is that once the time for public comments has expired, the time for a councillor comment has expired again. Now, I've been on DMC for a very long time. I've been a councillor for a long time. I was certainly not aware that I should be applying to the Director of Growth to call in a planning application. I look forward to reading that bit of the Constitution because it's clearly passed me by. But all this is about is a review of a situation which is currently unclear. And if you don't put this review through, then you might be restricting councillors' right to reflect the views and to represent their constituents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Councillor Marks, you have the right to reply if you wish to.
I certainly do wish to, Madam Mayor. Now, it's interesting that after the last motion where we had this cross-party consensus, which was very welcome, it was extremely good debate and people spoke well. I have obviously failed miserably to get my point over on this. And I have to say I'm extremely disappointed by the responses from various Labour councillors to this. I mean, I'm getting the feeling that a 6-month non-determination appears to be okay, which is a complete nonsense given what Councillor Grime has been saying, Councillor Guthrie, about this. And like Councillor Barr, I've been on this council many years, and I had no idea that the Director of Growth was able to call in an application. And like Councillor Barr, I would like someone to point me to the part of the Constitution where it says that. And the fact is, we don't know this. I suspect not too many other councillors on this call also know that. Now, as several of my colleagues have pointed out, we are not asking you tonight to change the Constitution. And you talked about this word woolly and more flexibility. All we're asking is that the monitor officer and then to the Constitution Subcommittee should look at this to see if it will be clarified. We think it's an eminently sensible thing to happen because it is undemocratic what happens at the moment. And for you to reject it in this way, I find extraordinarily disappointing. And I'm surprised. I knew you wouldn't sort of welcome it in open arms because you never do. But I honestly think this is a sensible thing. And as the drafter of the motion, I take responsibility for a very badly worded motion, in your opinion. I think it's clear enough. And I think I'm very disappointed that we're not going down this route. As I say, if the DMC at some later stage want to ask for clarification on that, well, that's fine. I don't mind how it happens as long as it's looked at. And I do accept the point that Councillor Bowden made that it is most unusual to be critical of council officers. Usually the thing you do, the textbook says, you criticise the ruling party. And to that extent, I suppose I'm criticising the ruling party. But there's been so many problems for many years with the planning department, and really the Labour administration should have done rather more to sort this out, because the members of the public are dissatisfied and frustrated with the lack of communication, the responses they're getting. And this is not right. And the council should not be happy with this. They should be wanting to do something about it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marks. I'd like to call on the Chief Executive to take a vote, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Taking a vote now, members. Councillor Abbey, please. Okay, move to Councillor Barr, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bate.
4.
Councillor Biggin.
4.
Councillor Bowden.
Against.
Councillor Buckley.
Abstain.
Councillor Carey.
Against.
Yeah. Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Cooksey.
Against.
Councillor Cregan.
Against.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
Against.
Councillor Flaherty.
Against.
Councillor Frasley.
4.
Councillor Diane Friend.
Against.
Councillor Graham Friend.
Against.
Councillor Froggatt.
Against.
Councillor Grime.
Against.
Councillor Guthrie.
Against.
Councillor Hall.
Against.
Councillor Hannon.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
4.
Councillor Higgins. Councillor Hill.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Keane. Councillor Keane. Councillor Kerr-Brown.
Against.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Knowles. Councillor Marks.
4.
Councillor McCarthy.
Against.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Against.
Councillor Mitchell.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Hans Mundry.
Against.
Councillor Karen Mundry.
Against.
Councillor Parish.
Against.
Councillor Patel.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tarr.
Against.
Councillor Peter Walker.
For.
Councillor Warburton.
Against.
Councillor Wellborn. Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Pat Wright.
Against.
And Councillor Steve Wright.
Against.
Thank you,
Councillor
members.
Sorry,
Yes, Councillor Abbey.
Against.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
let me get my mute off. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Cheers.
I declare the motion defeated. Motion 3. Adult social care funding in Warrington. Councillor Barr, please propose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to propose this motion and I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, please second.
Yes, I second the motion and reserve the right to speak, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Barr, can you speak on the motion, please?
I can indeed. I hope that our consideration of this motion can be quite brief. It is about the explanation of the 3% element in the precept that has led to a 4.8% increase in our council tax this year. And that this is the adult social care precept, which the government has, to all intents and purposes, forced local authorities to go into unless they were willing to slash the adult social care budgets. And this is because central government has failed for 10 years to come up with any proper financial settlement for adult social care that actually shares the cost fairly and appropriately and doesn't dump the cost onto local council taxpayers. This in itself, as an argument with central government, wouldn't need to come before the council. But I'm afraid that the Conservatives are running in the local elections this time round on a promise to freeze council tax. Presumably they would have frozen this council tax. Presumably they would not have increased the 3%, added the 3% precept for adult social care, because that's the only way they could have done it. So I think it is contingent on them, but also on us to explain to the public what the impact would be of that 3% cut from our adult social care budget. I was going to raise an issue with Councillor Mitchell earlier on, because in her announcements, cabinet announcement, she told me that the budget for Warrington was clear. There was a new part of the website, and I've looked at the new part of the website, I've looked at the booklet that went out with my council tax bill, and I've looked at the finances. And I'm afraid it's not really as clear as it should be. People don't know. They can see that 44 pence out of every pound is spent on adult social care. They can't see what that's spent on, nor can they see what the amount of money is that represents. And I think that the public need to be told this, otherwise they will be misled by political parties who run on nonsensical manifestos. And also, the idea of freezing council tax comes on top of the idea of getting rid of the council's investments and getting rid of the 20 million in revenue that supports council services. So the Tories are suggesting that they would cut the budget of the council by somewhere between a sixth and a fifth, and are not saying at all what the consequences would be. I think it is important that the council lays out before the public what the consequences of such cuts would be and what the consequences of not putting the 3% levy on this year would have been. And also, I think it's important that we should call on our MPs to reiterate their demands in Parliament for a proper settlement for adult social care funding, which has been deferred and deferred by consecutive Tory governments, including one of our own MPs who was the MP for social funding, who was the Minister for social care funding for a while. So I look forward to the whole of the council supporting this motion for us to give the public clarity and to demand clarity from our representatives in Westminster. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Councillor Walker, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, if I may. I will try and be brief. We have had various commitments by the Conservatives, but no action about solving the social care issue. When we were in coalition, and I know that's referred to often by the opposition, we were proposing a solution, and the Dilnot report was prepared. This received a great deal of support. The report urged greater integration between health, social care, benefits and housing, with a particular focus on the health and social care side. And its forecast, it was asking for pooled budgets. Now, the cost of doing that was estimated then in 2012 to be by 2026 only 0.22 of GDP, not exactly a large amount in the scheme of things in this country. It is not unaffordable. However, the Dilnot report was abandoned as soon as the Conservatives became a majority government, and it has never been looked at again, and nor have any alternatives been proposed, except of course funding via the council tax, which is, I think we'd all agree, not the way to do it, but it is the only way that local government can get the money it needs, and it's certainly not enough, to solve or work the social care responsibilities that they have. So I hope you will all support the motion and ask our MPs to take some action in Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Knowles, you wish to speak.
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillors Barr and Walker for this motion. They're right to draw attention to the importance of adult social care funding and the predicament that Warrington and other councils up and down the country have faced in setting their budget for the forthcoming year. Indeed, unlike Warrington, some councils have been unable to set a balanced budget, and it's undoubtedly the case that meeting the challenge of funding care for the most vulnerable people in our communities is a statutory duty that some have been unable to adequately maintain. During the budget meeting, our Liberal Democrat colleagues attempted to make a distinction between their support for the adult social care precept element of the budget, which they clearly supported, and the overall budget, which they did not. Councillor Marks made what lawyers might call a nice distinction, but it seems that his colleagues are now in difficulties in relation to attacks from those in our town who are highly critical of the need for council tax rises. I note that the opposition did not put forward an alternative budget, but far more significantly, neither did the Tories. Despite many criticisms, much hyperbole and hot air about council debt, which studiously avoids mention that it's asset-backed and revenue-generating, no pearls of wisdom have ever been brought forth by the Tories about how best to meet the needs of local people. The truth of the matter is that the Conservatives in Westminster have played a confidence trick on this country. They announced increased funding for adult social care last autumn, whilst neglecting entirely to say that it will be passported to local residents by means of the power to levy this additional precept. I could have cried with disappointment when I found out that the recent budget failed to mention adult social care once. This year, of all years, the public is far more aware of the crucial role local government plays in looking after the most vulnerable residents in Warrington. My portfolio announcements at each full council give an idea of the scope of the work that's done. This isn't just about elderly people. It's also about those with learning difficulties, adults with physical disabilities and disabling health conditions, those with mental health problems, those who need to be safeguarded in various ways, those recovering from illness, and those who need support to care for loved ones. It's about the assistive equipment people need, the adapted or supported housing, and the care call service that picks them up when they fall. It's also about managing the precarious market within which all these services exist to ensure that suitable provision is available when and where it's needed. I'm more than happy for the public understanding of adult social care services to be developed. However, I'd also observe that it's a topic that many people aren't interested in. Unless you're in receipt of services or have a loved one who is, adult social care isn't something most of us like to think about. I think this is regrettable, as there is some excellent partnership working and innovative practice in Warrington and a deep commitment to successfully delivering these areas of the Council's services. This is why, as an administration, we've committed to make the commercial investments that generate the net income that underpins the work the Council is still able to do. I like to think of this as an invest to serve strategy. But undoubtedly, people think of council services in terms of visible things like bin emptying, litter and the quality of road surfaces, maybe the quality of our parks and open spaces, and not the 44p in the pound taken up by adult social care and 23 pence spent on children's social care. To conclude, the loss of a further 3.1 million next year would have been catastrophic for Warrington. I'm proud that we've not had to invoke easements of the deprivation of liberty safeguards and that we continue to be able to fulfil our statutory duties despite the extreme challenges presented by the COVID pandemic. It has been said many times at council meetings that we need a grown-up national conversation about adult social care and that it needs comprehensive reform at governmental level. It's now 10 years since the Dilnot Commission reported its findings, but there's been no action by David Cameron, Theresa May and now Boris Johnson. Andy Carter's predecessor fell foul of this subject as a junior health minister over Mrs May's so-called death tax. But it can't be brushed under the carpet, and the realities of setting a balanced budget for Warrington can't be shirked either. The Tories are letting down some of the most vulnerable people in Britain, and I join in asking our members of Parliament to demand better for the people of this town at every opportunity available to them. It is not morally acceptable to leave adult social care funding in a vacuum. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Barr, you have the right to reply.
Thank you very much indeed. I very much welcome almost everything that Councillor Knowles has said. There is a very large degree of agreement between us on this. The knockabout over the budget is just the usual bit of council show business. The reason that we wouldn't vote for a budget is because it was opaque. And I've gone through the budget in detail. I've gone through the budget book in detail. So, for example, when you look at the Our Sources of Funding page in the budget book, it does not include the revenue that comes from the investments. In fact, it's very, very difficult to find where the 20 million from investments feeds into services. It wasn't properly explained, and that's why the armchair accountants, the armchair warriors can attack us. As likewise, the Warrington pound wasn't properly explained, and that's why we're asking for proper explanations. So we objected to the budget because it was opaque, not because of its content. We agreed with the content because the same officers that we would have used to write the content wrote the content. We didn't disagree with the content of the budget. We disagreed with the political presentation of the budget. However, on this issue of the precept and asking our MPs, I hope that we can put those discussions and arguments aside and all agree that this is something that we would like to ask our MPs to do, and this is something as a council we're willing to do to show how good the work we do for adult social care is and how essential the funding is. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Councillor Bowden, you've indicated you wanted to speak.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I realise Councillor Barr's come back. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time I've ever seen a group vote against the budget and then feel that they've got to come back to the next meeting with a motion in order to explain themselves for their actions.
No, explain you.
And to say, sorry, I'm talking. And to say that they supported bits when they come under public pressure for their decisions. I imagine the Lib Dems will tell us next that they didn't vote against the capital investment to resurface the Forge car park at Stockton Heath. I'll give you a clue, Bob. You did. OK. It looks like to me we've got election fever taking over. We also had at our budget meeting our Conservative member who, having voted for the council's treasury management strategy, audit and corporate governance, then voted against it at the budget meeting. This is simply playing games. And I do agree with Councillor Barr. What we're seeing now is the Tories in election mode, promising zero council tax rises, promising increased spending wherever you want it to happen in your community, and promising that they'll get rid of the debt. Those are mutually exclusive aims that are frankly letting down the people of Warrington. They're dishonest and they are irresponsible in terms of commitment to the vital services that people of this town rely upon. And I hope indeed everybody will be taking that fight to the Conservatives and demonstrating to the public why they can't be trusted in any respect in terms of this council. Having made those points, Madam Mayor, I would say
quickly, please,
that any increased coverage and understanding of what is a national adult social care crisis is absolutely useful, and I'm happy to support that engagement with the public from the council in the way proposed in the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it the will of the meeting that the motion is agreed?
Yes.
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 I abstain.
Yes.
No objections? Any abstentions?
Yes, Councillor Buckley.
Councillor Buckley. The motion is agreed. Thank you. Now, motion 4 was added to motion 1. So we will go into motion 5. And Councillor McLaughlin, please propose. This is on fireworks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I propose the motion. Over the past couple of years, I've received a number of emails from worried dog owners in my ward concerned about the stress caused to their pets by fireworks. I know that many other councillors have received similar emails. As a dog owner myself, I fully understand their concerns. I also know that it's not only pets and their owners that are negatively impacted because of noisy fireworks, but also, very importantly, some vulnerable people, both young and old, for whom the loudest noises caused by fireworks can be very distressing. So, although it's less than usual to put forward a motion to this virtual chamber, primarily concerned with animal welfare, I feel strongly that we have an opportunity here to do what we can to help alleviate this problem. And in doing so, we will support a wider group of people negatively impacted by fireworks. When I think back to my youth, fireworks night was very much restricted to one night and maybe one Saturday close to the 5th of November. However, these days it seems to start earlier and earlier, with the first few fireworks happening around Halloween and then continuing through to the weekend after bonfire night and sometimes beyond that. It can go on over 2 weeks or more, and that makes it very difficult for pet owners who need to stay at home from the time it starts going dark, and sometimes even have to sedate their animals to reduce the stress caused to them. My own little dog suffered so badly one year that he ended up in doggy hospital due to a very severe reaction. We now use various calming therapies to help, but even so, we can't leave him on his own at all once it goes dark for a period of around 2 weeks in late October and early November. And our evenings at this time are beset with anxious barking. Of course, this motion doesn't only apply at the time around Halloween. Nowadays, there are a number of other festivities and other celebratory occasions throughout the year which prompt the use of fireworks. Just to be clear, the proposals are not intended to prevent people from enjoying fireworks. It's not a motion against fireworks or firework displays, but it is a motion intended to reduce the impact of fireworks, especially loud fireworks, on pets, other wildlife, pet owners, and also on some vulnerable members of our community who can struggle with anxiety due to noisy fireworks. It's about asking people to be thoughtful so that their enjoyment doesn't come at a cost to others. It asks the council to require all public fireworks displays to be advertised in advance of the event, to actively promote a public awareness campaign about the impact of fireworks, to encourage local suppliers of fireworks to stock quieter fireworks for public display, and finally to ask the leader of the council to write to the government to ask for a maximum noise level for fireworks at public and private displays to be set at 90 decibels. These 4 points are those recommended by the RSPCA as part of their Bang Out of Order campaign. They're not unreasonable measures, but they will help to make a difference, and I urge all members to back the motion. And I do have a little friend here with me who's behaved very, very well throughout the meeting and would like to back that, so I'm going to introduce you. This is Sherlock, who's asking me to back the campaign as well. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Don't know how that happened. Councillor Guthrie, can you second the motion?
Yes, can I second this motion? And can I reserve the right to speak?
You can. Councillor McLaughlin, can you speak to this motion?
I just have spoken to the motion, Madam
You're
Mayor.
all right. Sorry, dear. Right. Do any of the members wish to speak to the matter? It's getting it on.
Madam Mayor, can I speak briefly? Councillor Bates.
Councillor Bates, yes, you can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think my group and I broadly welcome this motion. I think it's full of balance and reason and asks for people to be considerate. And I guess the equivalent would be that if people are playing, you know, music outdoors, having a garden party, which hopefully we can look forward to in the summer, COVID permitting, then most people are thoughtful enough of their near neighbours to manage the volume and certainly to think about the time of day. And all we're asking is for similar neighbourliness and consideration and thought when people are using fireworks. So I broadly support this motion, and I'm sure my colleagues and I will be fully supportive of it in the vote. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Have I got on that? That is it. Is it the will of the meeting? Yeah, that the recommendation that, sorry, this motion is agreed.
Aye.
Yes, good. Do I have any objections or abstentions, please? No. Thank you. This motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item motion 6 will now be taken by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion 6, local government pay. Can I please ask Councillor Mitchell to propose the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I propose this motion and reserve the right to speak on it.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Hall, please can I ask you to second the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak on the motion now, please?
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to give this issue some context. Council funding has been slashed since 2010 under the Conservative government's failed austerity policy. This is not a Warrington problem. It's all across the country. Councils have lost 60 pence in the pound of their funding. We've heard that 44 pence in the pound of our money goes to adult social care. The funding of adult social care, as we've heard, is in urgent need of reform. Both Theresa May and Boris Johnson have promised to sort it out, but both have failed to do anything about it. In the spending review last autumn, the Conservatives announced desperately needed funding for adult social care, but then told us that most of it would come from council tax. The government chose council tax as the mechanism to fund adult social care, instead of money generated from more progressive, means-tested taxes. That was a choice by government, and most councils had no choice but to take up the precept. Obviously, this is just a sticking plaster. Real reform is urgently needed. The government promised a review of council funding. Still waiting. The government promised to look again at how much of our business rates we can keep. Still waiting. So demand for council services is growing, and at the same time our funding is falling. Children's services take up 23 pence in the pound. So all of this care takes up nearly 70% of our budget. These are services hidden from people until they're directly affected, but they are so important. Across the whole council, staff are doing more with less. As part of the spending review, government announced a pay freeze for the public sector. In Warrington, this Labour administration has done everything possible to avoid cutting services and staff by generating income from our investments. Had we not done that, we would have had no alternative but to make more cuts to services like adult and children's social care, relied upon by the most vulnerable people in this town. Cuts to services must be the plan by the local Conservatives, since they would have needed £5 million worth of cuts for freezing council tax, and then a further £20 million worth of cuts for selling off our investments. There was also this £11 million budget gap going into next year. That is clearly a cause for great concern, and people need to really understand what they're voting for. This pandemic has highlighted the wonderful staff we have who care for our loved ones and children in need, our refuse staff who haven't missed a collection, and staff who've adapted to different jobs to help people. They are all superheroes, and I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to all of our staff for everything that they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Hall, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Over the last year, local government staff in Warrington have been at the forefront of the efforts against the COVID-19 pandemic, supporting our local communities every step of the way and putting themselves at risk, working longer hours, enduring increased workloads, all under extremely difficult circumstances. They've kept care homes, schools, refuge collection, public health programmes and child protection going. They've supported local businesses, and the Safe and Well team has been supporting the most vulnerable. It's not an exaggeration to say that our council and school workers are instrumental in delivering the vital public services Warrington residents rely upon. They are the glue that holds our communities together. Last year, we stood united on our doorsteps to clap for our key workers. We did it to give our heartfelt thanks to the heroes of the pandemic. Those who put themselves at risk to protect our public health, provide quality housing, ensure our children continue to be educated, and look after older and vulnerable people. But they deserve more recognition than a round of applause. They deserve a proper real terms pay increase. And how have they been rewarded? The Tory government's reward to our staff is a punitive pay freeze, cuts in the living standards, and persistent job insecurity. Local government has endured central government funding cuts of more than 50% since 2010. Between 2010 and 2020, councils lost 60p out of every £1 they had received from central government. The Tory government's failure to follow through on its commitment to fully reimburse the council the extra costs incurred by the pandemic has been a further blow to Warrington. Despite being hit hard by central government cuts, our Labour Council has committed to paying the Living Wage Foundation rate. Now it's time for central government to step up. It's time for the Tory government to take responsibility and fully fund a proper real terms pay increase for our local government workers, and in doing so, recognise their invaluable contribution. I urge members to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I have no indications that any other members wish to speak. Is there anybody? Can you confirm?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Marks, please.
Thank you, Councillor Marks. Go ahead, please.
No, thank you. No, the early part of the wording on this motion has our full support. We agree that local government has suffered disproportionately from government cuts. It has actually been a victim of its own success because somehow it has managed to cope. And like Councillor Mitchell, we despair that the Tories believe we could cope with a council tax freeze and no income from investments. I would actually be interested to know if our Tory member goes along with this dogma. Now, government has failed to provide promised support to make up for losses in income and increased costs due to the pandemic. And councils have led the way in efforts against COVID and have been very successful in their endeavours. And this contrasts with the Conservative government, which has made a dreadful mess of everything it has touched, with the single exception of vaccinations. And our workers have put themselves at risk in looking after others. But we start to part company with the wording in the paragraph on job insecurity. Now, there is massive job insecurity in the private sector too. And so we think it is wrong to single out local government for special treatment. We do agree that public sector workers deserve a real terms pay increase, but we believe that 10% is excessive. Now, how is this 10% to be funded? Yes, some of it could come from central government, but not this full amount. And any increase that does come needs to be progressive and favour the lower paid. So as regards this motion, it's something like we don't really like doing. We're asking Liberal Democrats to abstain on this. We cannot vote in favour because of the 10% increase, but we cannot vote against it because of the fine words and true words about our employees. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marks. Have Councillor Barr, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In line with Councillor Marks, I actually object to only one phrase in the whole of this motion, and that is with a minimum 10% uplift in April 2021. Everything else about the motion, even the insecure working, I personally agree with. Now, I think it's a matter of pride that Warrington pays the true living wage, not the minimum wage dressed up as a living wage that the Tories have brought in, which isn't a living wage. I think that in-work poverty is an absolute scandal, and it is absolutely scandalous that those looking after the most vulnerable suffer from in-work poverty themselves within the council, which is why I, as with Councillor Marks, would like to have seen a far more progressive suggestion, a progressive suggestion that concentrated the increases in pay on the least well paid, because there are council workers who work extremely hard, are fairly rewarded for it, but are certainly not amongst those who are in work poverty, and they're the ones who I think ought to be targeted. And I think at a time of COVID, when an awful lot of people in private business have suffered enormously in terms of lost wages, lost jobs, lost salaries, the idea of 10% across the board is just union lunacy. And I'm afraid I'm old enough to remember that the unions bought in 18 years of Tory government in 1979 by asking for completely unreasonable things from a Labour government, and Labour government didn't cave in but lost the elections afterwards. So here I think that asking for a minimum of 10% destroys this motion for me. I don't want to vote against the motion. I will abstain from the motion. If, on the other hand, the proposers were prepared to take out simply that phrase with a minimum 10% uplift in April 2021, I would urge my group to vote for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. And I have Councillor Bowden now, please.
Sorry, very quick comment, Madam Mayor. I don't know if I caught that right from Councillor Barr regarding the pay for council workers. I'm really proud. I think it's one of our great achievements as a Labour administration was actually adopting the Living Wage Foundation real living wage for our council workers as a minimum. So it certainly isn't the Tories' idea of a national minimum wage. That was all my comment. Thank you.
That's exactly what I was saying, Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. I have no more people wishing to speak, so Councillor Mitchell, you have the right of reply. Do you wish to say anything more?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I think because of the indications of different amount of votes, different ways of voting, I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to please take the vote.
Thank you, Jean. Move to the vote, members, please. So, Councillor Abbey.
For.
Councillor Barr.
Abstain.
Councillor Bate.
Abstain.
Councillor Biggin.
Reluctantly abstain.
Councillor Bowden.
Hello?
Quite pleasingly 4.
Hello?
Councillor Buckley.
Hello? Hello?
Abstain.
Councillor Carey. Councillor Carter.
Go.
See?
4.
Councillor Cregan.
4.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
4.
Councillor Flaherty.
4.
Councillor Fradgley.
Abstain.
Councillor Friend. Diane Friend.
Diana Friend, abstain.
Councillor Graham Friend.
Abstain.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Should have been abstaining.
Councillor Grime.
4.
Councillor Guthrie.
4.
Councillor Hall.
4.
Councillor Hannon.
4.
Councillor Harris.
Abstain.
Councillor Higgins.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Johnson.
Abstain.
Councillor Keane.
4.
Councillor Kerr-Brown.
4.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor Knowles.
4.
Councillor Marks.
Abstain.
Councillor McCarthy.
4.
Councillor McLaughlin.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Hans Mundry.
4.
Councillor Karen Mundry.
4.
Councillor Parish.
4.
Councillor Patel.
4.
Councillor Matt Smith.
4.
Councillor Tarr.
4.
Councillor Peter Walker.
Reluctantly abstain.
Councillor Warburton.
4.
Councillor Wellborn. Councillor Wheeler.
Abstain.
Councillor Pat Wright.
4.
And Councillor Steve Wright.
Without any hesitation, 4.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Back to you now, Alan Jean. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could you advise me of the result of the vote, please?
Yes. Is it
Vote was carried.
carried?
It was carried.
Carried, Deputy
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Carried. Thank you.
Members, thank you very much. The motion was carried. And I will hand back to the Mayor to conclude the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The meeting is now concluded. Thank you so much for coming and to be involved this evening. Have a lovely Easter. Enjoy. If you can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam
Deputy Mayor.
Mayor.
Farewell to those